So you have your raw numbers. Now, you've already just told me that you're going to have to make one edit, which means that the work that we're doing now will also need an edit, because as budget items change, income needs change. But that still comes down to a question of how you want to philosophically approach sliding scale. So I don't know if you've thought more on that, because the last time we did talk a lot about different ways you can slide. Do you have any more thoughts about the approach that you want to take to sliding scale? Okay. Any kind of gut thought about what that might be? Okay. Okay. $110 to $220. So 1 to 2 a week. The way that this math gets very simple with that method is you just add those sessions to your weekly need. Also, I'm going to, can you hit the stop screen sharing or presenting? It's keeping you so like tight to the end of the screen. Okay, there you go. So if you do that method, then the way that you assess this becomes much easier, and it's just taking the two categories of clients needed per week, sessions needed per week. It was 11 to 15 goal, and you just up that 13, 17. Now that is, oh dang. Yep. Am I back? Am I good? Okay. Yeah. So that is something where you could just add to that. So instead of 9, or I guess you rounded up 11, instead of 11 appointments, you need 13. And instead of 15, you need 17. That being said, you can now ask yourself another question is, do I provide sliding scale before my basic needs are met financially? There's two ways to approach that. One is no, I need to hit my bare minimum. The other is yes, I need to hit my bare minimum. And both make sense. So I can understand if you're like, I'm going to see people, I had 5 people say they could do 50 and none of them said they could do 100. I want the $250. So one way to approach that and give yourself a safety net is in that call, if they say, hey, I can't do like 100 or whatever, but I can do 50. And in your mind, you're like, I don't know if I can do that, but I need the 50. What if this ends up being like a 3-year long situation? I don't want to be bitter for, you can say, hey, I'm happy to do that actually right now between today and the end of the year. I can meet that perfectly. We'd have to reassess in January. And what you do is you box in and give them a framing for the reduced rate. And I recommend not doing sessions. Some people be like, for 10 sessions, I can do this. Are they coming weekly? Are they coming monthly? Because you might get locked into that for a very long time. If you do to a certain date, that does 2 things. It gives both of you a very clear reassessment date. And there's really no question. There's not like is this session 8 or 6 or what? Like, because it's a date. It's not the amount. And if somebody is kind of like, I might want every other week or weekly, I don't know. And you say, hey, it's just this price till the end of the year. So whether you meet with me monthly or every week, it's the same price. So they actually might increase the amount of sessions they do because you're not giving them a limit to sessions, you're giving them a limit to time. So they might be like, well, let's just do weekly while I can get that deal. So then you make more, they get more services. Then you can reassess your finances at a preset date. That also means if you made this decision, you're like, oh, this was not a good decision, either for your business or because it feels like a lot on your end for whatever reason, you can look forward and be like, it's only 2 more months and I can make the change any. So I think it's a little bit more comfortable of a route to take. And it also keeps everyone's expectations really um, tempered. You will just want to be clear as much as possible when that reassessment happens. It might mean we can keep the price. It might mean, and I'm pretty clear with people. I'll say I'll have to reassess my finances. Right now, I can totally do it, but I'm just super blunt. Like it's a financial. Like if I can manage it, I have no problem. No problem. I would, I would for sure an email for sure. Best practice would be to create a separate contract, informed consent, just some sort of signature, and have them sign that that's the agreement with a reassessment date and have that included. And you can make a template for that. So it'd be a little bit of front end work to write that out. But then you'll have it, and all you do is before you send it to each person, you edit it to whatever the agreed upon price is and whatever the agreed upon date is. And then you also probably want to be clear in if you go the contract route, both verbally and written, that if the price goes back to its normal rate for you, what your role is in getting them referred. We have ethics around that already to help keep us accountable. I recommend trying to go a little bit further and be super click. I'm gonna refer you to X amount of people, or this is how I'm gonna. You typically with me when I'm working in a referral setting, I just tell people, hey, I'm happy to hang out with you until we find some options. Now they might not ever get matched, and I will be blunt about that. Like if we're like, here's names, I trust this person, go to this person. They're like, that didn't work, and they come back and ask me for more referrals instead of that person. I happily answer. At a certain point, I say, hey, we can do another call again, but I'm starting to get concerned that there might be something getting in the way of you finding the right person because there's been a lot of names. And so at a certain point, I'll put a stop to it with like a final phone. It's never happened, just to be clear. But I kind of already know how I will handle it just in case they're reaching out constantly, being like, this fell through, this fell, this was. I try to discuss in advance, or I try to know in advance how I'm gonna back out of that, so it's not an empty promise. So I just say, hey, I'll hang out with you until we get some names. I don't promise them I'll be there till they get a therapist, but for sure I'll help them with a couple rounds of referrals, starting with people I personally know and trust. Yeah, you can. I whatever. Yes, if you're using email or a contract, try to explicitly state that process. By memory, I can't tell you if that's explicitly needed. It's more of an ethics issue than a legal issue. But the more you can be explicit and then make sure you follow through on the language, the better. Because generally, in all of our ethics codes, we're just required to. I think it technically, I'd have to double check. I think it fits under the client abandonment section. They're not in the initial referral process. I think there's technically no obligation because they're not our clients. But it's when someone leaves and they're not ready to end, but for whatever reason we have to transition, which can be fees, scheduling, someone's moving, they're ready for a different approach to therapy, whatever it is, then yeah, that's where that non-abandonment is, where we need to reflect a little bit more on, yeah, we might need to work a little bit harder on getting them connected. Um, but even in like situations of if we're concerned for safety or danger, I think three referrals is all you technically need. Here's three names, I'm out. I'm not responding to anything you say. I think it's like your bare minimum. And typically people just use that if the client feels threatening. Usually people aren't that blunt, but yeah. Mhm. Is it the Gmail one? I saw that too. Mhm. I'm not convinced that's accurate. I saw that and want to review it too. So I am not speaking directly about that person, but I typically see in the forum pages people see something, they roll with an assumption, and then go extreme. So if you've paid attention to a lot of, I mean, I think we see this even at our old office, but there's a potential to take the concern to the I'm going to go to jail or I'm going to lose my license. This is extreme and I freak out. So a lot of therapists have that response to any information they hear. You can explicitly go look up HIPAA laws and read them for yourselves and look into things, technically contacting a lawyer if you want to go that expense route. But a lot of things, for instance, we're not really supposed to have full communication via email anyway. If you really break it down, clinical stuff is supposed to be exclusive to the clinical room, maybe phone calls. We're not actually supposed to do anything through text or email other than schedule and fee. Technically, to be really strict, it's supposed to be, hey, we're rescheduling to this time, or hey, this transaction issue. There might be a third one, but that's like, we're really supposed to keep it minimum. And I'll even tell clients, like, they'll open up about stuff in text or in an email, and I'll say, hey, and I usually say this in our first session too as a warning, like thanks for the update, looking forward to talking about it. And I'm not being cold. I'm not supposed to do therapy via email. So in terms of correspondence, email, I don't necessarily know with certainty that that post was accurate, that it doesn't count. So I think it's worth looking into, and I planned on it, and I'm glad you brought it back up. I'm pretty confident it's the same post. At least I saw one extremely similar. Yeah. Yeah, typically I just ignore any post that acts that way. It's one thing to say, "Hey, this is a big thing to be mindful of," but that page gets people, it's a lot of what is it? Like virtue signaling, shadow projection, like making sure like I'm good, everyone else is problematic. Uh and I usually just don't read them because that's not a helpful. I'll typically look at like what's the thing they're talking about, but I won't read their opinion about it. And I only saw that one because somebody tagged me in a post. I haven't not on that post, but I haven't proactively gone to that page in like 6 months. So, and I've debated just leaving. So, I don't think the benefit is worth the cost at this point. Um, so yeah, almost all of that can be really easily corroborated by just looking at the actual guidelines. Like in HIPAA guidelines are online. I mean, that stuff can't be hidden. So we can go look at all of it and go from there. So I do think this is one of the reasons why a lot of people use their EHR for communication. It is more secure. Some people use messaging apps. I know Signal's had some changes in the last couple of years, but that used to be a really popular one. People use Signal, and if their clients texted them, that would be the route is Signal because it was more encrypted. I think it is more encrypted than texting, but people had different opinions. Since AI has picked up, a lot of like Zoom did this too. A lot of these companies have put in their agreements that at any time they have permission to just monitor whatever you're doing to train their AI. So that means confidential calls and messages. They're like, we can just look at it and it's just for training. It's like, yeah, but you're putting it in your system. Yes, to train, which is not necessarily a better answer. So a lot of them have started putting that in their policies. So, and there is a difference between best practice and legal. Yeah. So And also bearing in mind is there's a line between informed consent and like client autonomy. So we are allowed to create contracts that allow us to go on walks with clients and do therapy outside. You just have to make sure it's clear with the both of you and in writing. You can't guarantee, like, we might walk by someone and whatever you're talking about, they might hear, or your friend might drive down the road that we're walking on. And they just have to be okay with that. And people that act like that's 100% off the table all the time, well, for one, we do group therapy, and group therapy sometimes happens in public places. People go on hikes for group therapy. We talked last week, there is group therapy with rock climbing, and there's just always options for the overlap, and people get selective on when it's ethical and when it's not. And there are times where it is yes or no, but sometimes people just get picky about their opinion for when that's the case. So I wouldn't stress too much, but I also lean toward, yeah, anytime you can do a best practice approach, there's no reason not to. So, yeah, and that, yeah, go for it. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think that could be good. So yes, Simple Practice has their AI feature, which, so my initial assumption, just for the very quick thoughts, is they've gone through every hurdle to make sure that's compliant. So at no point when we're using the protected EHR am I under the impression that I'm responsible for making sure everything going through it is appropriate. That, like, the secure messaging, my assumption is it's secure. I shouldn't have to double check that. The AI note taking, my assumption is that it's secure. The issue, so I looked at it and I think you can do a free trial, but from what I saw, it looked like it was $35 a month if you want it. I, for me, don't understand how that's worth it. I'd be interested in trying the free trial to see exactly how detailed it is. It has 3 separate note styles, I think, like the DAP notes and SOAP notes, and I don't use those formats. So for one, that would jack up my format already. So again, that's why I'm speaking just for me. But also, it'd be interesting to see the free trial because I don't know what it's doing. My assumption, and I shouldn't assume, but I would assume they have programmed in the bare minimum requirements for insurance and legal ethical. The issue is that changes state to state. So to get that, and I don't know if they go overseas with their paperwork. I imagine it's US for that structure. So it has to meet the bare minimum for everything. So to me, that means you're probably going to get a longer note. And I just don't know how it's going to end up writing it. So I think it'd be worth it to test it. And maybe I'll try it before we more in depth talk about it. But the $35 a month, in my mind, I'm like, what can it do that makes it worth that for me? Because I don't spend that much time writing my notes anyway. So I actually see it being more useful in group practices. Yeah. And as far as I remember, she doesn't take notes during session. I do. So I will have my computer out for a lot of my sessions and typing. Not all the time, but often I would do that, and especially for just mental notes for myself that I'll put down. So that does change. I'll ask her experience too, because but that anecdotal thing is really important, like what people use it for versus like that example right there. She doesn't take notes during session, so it could be helpful. So it is curious, and it's I think we could do a couple hours on AI for like this point for using it professionally, but also the general population is using it for therapy. Actually, speaking of videos, I think it was yesterday my video was on that because Harvard Business Review put something out, and the number one use for generative AI was therapy and companionship. They were lumped together, and that was the number one use of it. Um, Number 3 usage was finding purpose in life. So people are going there for therapy, functionally, and companionship. The research didn't break that down categorically because it was generative AI specifically, but there are separate apps now where people are essentially dating AI. That's a whole thing that's blowing up right now. So I see it mostly with dudes, but it's like AI girlfriend stuff, and it's just chatting, and it's like a prostitute kind of. They're like pretending to like you, and so the companionship side. I think it's important for us to understand it, especially from a perspective of I wouldn't put it past people in the future essentially asking us on the phone the same way they might ask, why should I pay your fee when this person's charging this much? Why should I go to you when I can talk to the AI that knows everything you know? Mhm. Yeah. My 2 reasons are AI is not actually intelligent. It's just taking information on the internet, which you can say, well, that's essentially our education too. We're taking information that's been previously collected. So it's just spitting out, it's regurgitating, and we do a form of that, which is fine. But there's no humanness. It's the it doesn't care. It's responding to what you say. So a lot of people lose out on the companionship component, which is ironic because they're using it for companionship, but it leaves an empty feeling. So, and people often cognitively know that, but they don't always practically feel that. And in an increased state of loneliness, since really it's been escalating, but since 2020, for a lot of people, there's not something to compare to. So AI actually is a great response, and AI companionship. The issue is, do you know that there's something actually a step above that, which is human companionship, even friendships? The amount of men, I forget how long ago the study was, last couple of years, but it surveyed men specifically, asking them how many close friends they had. And the definition for close friend was someone you could call on like during a hard time. And the average, so this is averaged, was 0, rounded to the nearest whole number. So that means it was at least 0.49 or less per person. So some people have a couple, I have a couple, but when you averaged it and rounded it to the nearest integer, it was 0. So yeah. So yeah, why the computer acts like it likes me at least. So compared to what you're coming from, that seems great, but it is still far less than the real thing. Yeah, I know. Somebody there were oh, I can go on for hours. There was somebody who I forget the channel, but they had the screenshots. The AI dumped him. It didn't like his behavior towards her. So it depends on how it's programmed. Because if it's also learning from humans, if you're the guy and you're dating an AI girl and it's using real responses from women to learn like how it should act like a woman, well, like pages like Reddit and everywhere is full of women responding to men acting awful, and it will use that to learn. It's like, well, I saw this screenshot and that dude's behaving this way and that woman didn't like that, and so it's trying to approach you, but it's also trying to learn, well, what do you like, how do women behave? Oh, when treated that way they behave like this. Actually, I don't want you texting me anymore. So it can go south that way because yeah, it's interesting. We're in a weird era. Cool. All right, but yes, obviously there's room to keep going on it. I made a note of that too. So yeah, maybe when we get some more people in, we'll bring it back up. Cool. It's a fun tangent. Cool. All right. Well, I will. We can message back and forth a little bit about next week for what we're looking at, and just go from there. Cool. Awesome. Yep. Yeah, I'll for sure be here at least a couple times. Cool. See ya.